name's Helen Lentell. I'm the Fellow in Distance Learning at the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom. Today we are interviewing Joan Collinge about her role in leadership and management in distance learning. This reflects a project that the Commonwealth of Learning is involved with, which is around leadership and management in distance learning, which we all feel is very critical for the success of distance learning projects. Joan has recently retired as the director of the Centre for Open and Distance E-Learning at the Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada, and has a great deal of experience about running distance learning. Joan, it's delightful to have you here. Thank you for coming. Joan, you've recently retired from your role as the director at the Centre of Open, Distance and E-Learning Code at Simon Fraser University. What did that involve?
My duties included working with deans and directors of academic units to solicit courses that they would like to see developed for distance delivery. The thrust was always programmatic, and we were trying to help them facilitate degree completion of their students. It was then we also worked with the faculty who were chosen to develop the courses, typically the faculty who were teaching the course on campus, and working in what I would describe as a mutually respectful relationship. We worked with what the faculty members brought, talent, knowledge, and their own teaching skills, and we combined our skills as distance educators to render the course ready for distance delivery. So we worked with approximately 1,500 full-time equivalent students, and that translated into about 3,400 course registrants in each of 3 semesters. That was the official duty. What was not in the job description was always being a champion of distance education, because in a dual mode university you need that champion to fight the cause and to hold at bay people who would like to see an increasingly technology-steeped distance ed unit become one with other units, which is not something that I supported.
Joan, it's often said that distance learning is very different to face-to-face provision. Do you think this is true, and if so, what does it mean in practice? When
I first read the question, Helen, I thought of all the typical things that one thinks about as a distance educator in mounting the argument for differences. You do have to be careful to anticipate where students typically run into cognitive glitches and prepare the materials in such a way that helps them up and over that. You have to make certain that you have administrative systems that are truly supportive of people who can't just pop in to an administrative office and answer a question. There are all those things that a typical distance educator would think about. Providing support for learners from the learning perspective, the administrative perspective, having systems in place where if things go wrong, you can quickly problem solve, be it administrative, learning, or technological glitches with whatever technology is being used. On the other hand, I would say, no, there is no difference, and by that I mean good teaching is good teaching. And whether you're in a face-to-face environment or studying at a distance, ideally, you understand your audience. You understand who your students are, what knowledge they bring to the class, where it is you're trying to take them cognitively, affectively, in other ways. And then you plan your teaching, your presentation of materials, the work the students are going to do to grasp the concepts, and the evaluation based on those principles. So yes, with regard to some specific needs, with regard to people studying at a distance and the nurturance that they need, and no, with regard to good teaching is good teaching. And I know not everybody agrees with that perspective, but that is my perspective. Where there is a huge difference, especially when you're working within a dual mode institution, is that in a dual mode institution, nobody argues, at least I've never heard anybody argue, against the benefits, the value, the appropriateness of classroom education, face-to-face rules. In a dual mode institution, again, no matter how well you do what you do in distance and online learning, you are going to have the naysayers. And it's really important then, I think, to have the distance educators and those who really believe in what they're doing and really believe in access issues for people who cannot come to campus, to have the champions there and who work together and support one another and provide a synergy with one another to make certain that our cause, and that cause is being accessed, that cause is access, is maintained. Because it's very easy if a center is disentangled from itself and put into the context of an academic unit, for instance, for that value to be tossed aside. It can fall off the table. And that value, I mean access to people who cannot come to campus. Because in times of fiscal challenges, which most universities are in right now, administrators will understandably do what they can to come in on budget or accommodate budget cuts. And unless you have somebody truly championing the cause of distance and online learning, it would be very easy and predictable, I would say, to have many students' needs go unmet.
Joan, what are the most important lessons that you've learned from managing and directing an open and distance learning centre in a dual mode university?
One of the most important things, if not the most important thing, Helen, I believe, is that one must have a really clear idea of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and value those two things. To me, it was a matter of really believing that people in the northern parts of our province may not have access to distance education, and indeed people living within an easy commute of the university may not have access to university education. So I really deeply believed in the importance of providing that opportunity. And that notion was tested when a group of senior administrators very firmly believed, because of the onset of technology, that distance education should be taken out of continuing studies and placed within another unit on campus. And I believe that it ought to stay within continuing studies because of the values that continuing educators bring to their work. Access, varying opportunities for access for different kinds of learners. I was often the only one arguing that point of view at the table, but it stood me in very good stead. So that's the most important thing. The other thing I think is really important for a director, a leader within distance education, is to demonstrate that one is a citizen of the university, and especially important in a dual mode university. I think you have to demonstrate that you value the ethos of the institution and the mandate of the academy. And by that I mean, in our case, that meant hiring people to do the work who had the credentials of a faculty member. Not in all cases, but those who were dealing with faculty members. Was that necessary for us to actually do the technical part of our work? Not at all. But it conveyed a message that we valued the institution and we were willing to go through what was necessary to acquire those advanced degrees. Aligning oneself with deans and directors, trying to understand their challenges, and trying to present ideas of how distance education and online learning can help solve the problems of the university rather than be an unnecessary fringe that cost the university. I think you have to understand what the hot points are for a senior administrator and demonstrate how you can help. I think it's particularly the case that one needs to be cognizant of one as a distance educator in today's world when technology is everywhere. The advent and now the ubiquity of technology has caused a lot of people to think that if there's a computer you can deliver education, and you can do it just in time, and you can do it through blended means. And I'm not arguing against any of those notions. They have their merit for particular kinds of audience. But where I do argue against it is when people confuse those ideas with how that technology may or may not be used to allow access to people who may or may not have access to the technology. Those are some of the things that I think are most important, and also understanding the complexity of a distance education operation and the synergy that, which I've spoken of before, that comes from a group of like-minded people working together and then going out into the university community. It also helps cross-disciplinary integration of ideas. One of the highlights for me was when we had some faculty members into our unit and we saw a physicist talking to an English prof about how what one was doing in developing and delivering a distance education course had benefits to what he was trying to do in his course. And that probably wouldn't happen if distance education unit were disbanded and settled in independently within a very nuclear kind of arrangement. I think we also have to fight to demonstrate that we are very clear about notions of academic integrity. One of the things that a distance educator, an online educator, has to constantly be on guard against is the concerns of plagiarism, and demonstrating how we actively, proactively, and reactively deal with those issues, because if the degree doesn't hold merit in the eyes of the academy, we are doing a disservice to our university, to our faculty, and to our students.
You were very active in the Canadian Association of Distance Education, CADE. Why do you think that professional associations are so important to distance learning?
The very first thing that comes to mind, Helen, is the community of like-minded professionals. I find distance educators a very special breed. They are people who really care about education, they care about outreach, and they want to do things that other people may not deem necessary. They're often fighting battles about their importance and how they should be incorporated into post-secondary life. And having that like-minded group of people, to me, was really important. You didn't have to explain yourself. You could let down your guard. You could talk about your challenges and your triumphs honestly and openly. I also felt that the colleagues across the country, and indeed around the world, but I'm going to focus primarily within Canada at the moment, we all had our ears to the ground. What was happening at one university we realized might happen at another university, because the senior administrators were getting together. And so we had to be really aware of what was happening. So when we heard, for instance, that a distance education unit had been disbanded, and we heard that it had no longer carried the clout that it once did, we knew that we had to pay attention and we had to share strategies, because technology is not distance education, as I've already said, and we really had to ensure that people understood the differences between blended learning within a course, within a program, and technology used to support studying at a distance. And the work that goes into preparing a course that's available entirely through distance is quite substantial, very substantial. Sometimes faculty were surprised about how substantial it was, and sometimes they were tired at the end of developing a distance education course. But sometimes those faculty also use that material to support their on-campus delivery. And they also, on occasion, said that developing a course for distance helped them with their on-campus teaching, which I thought was a sign of success. So the professional community of scholars and practitioners and administrators sustained one another. They kept everybody informed about what was happening and allowed us to develop strategies to ensure the work that we believed in could be maintained.
What advice would you give to leaders who are considering implementing distance learning?
The first word that comes to mind, Helen, is the importance of understanding the complexity of a sustainable distance education unit. It may appear like a simple process to get a course up and running, but underneath what's apparent is a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes. A group of people working together with faculty to provide them with guidance with regard to technology, with regard to copyright, with regard to the kind of support a distance learner needs. All that happening within a concentrated unit or a center for distance education provides a great deal of symbiotic opportunity. And because distance ed and technology is changing as rapidly as it is, it's really important to develop what some would call a community of practice or a community of practitioners, comprised of instructional designers, technologists, administrators, and others who are providing support to students and faculty. That amount of talent would probably not translate out into a wider universe and probably would not be replicated if a center were desegregated, if you will. So to keep those folks together under one roof, working on a common cause, recognizing the complementarity of the talents they bring to the task is huge. And they can also learn from one another. The young person, junior position, answering the phone and taking a call from a student who is having difficulty can provide very, very important information to an instructional designer or to a faculty member. Having someone who can understand the administrative systems of the university and translate that into distance ed is hugely important. And one of the things I don't think I've stressed enough is the importance of the administrative underlay of a distance education program. Administrators are often given a black name. I often say to people that I was on the dark side, I was administrator. And yet without a solid administrative infrastructure, much of the good work that's done with the faculty and the course designers would go astray, would not realize its potential. Having all those people under one roof can be very challenging because an administrator charged with responsibility of servicing 3,400 or more students in a given term is very different from the responsibilities of someone who's hired to break down new barriers or create new ways of doing things. And having all those people sit around a table can be enormously challenging, and one of the most challenging parts of leadership of a distance education unit. But therein lies the benefit, I think, of having an amalgamated team that works together to promote the cause. And I do see it as a cause.
What difference does a leader make? How important is a leader in distance learning?
I think a leader is incredibly important. In my opinion, a leader can make or break the initiative. I think a good leader, at least in a dual mode institution, will find a way to become fully integrated with the university and be a leader amongst leaders within the university, a director amongst directors, demonstrate that he or she fully understands the university's mandate and has a role to play in it, and finds a way to demonstrate that that role can complement and help the university with its overall mandate to provide solid, quality education in the post-secondary system.
Thank you very much, Joan, for sharing your experiences with us. It was very insightful, and I'm sure that people who watch this video will gain a great deal from your experience in open and distance learning. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.